who the heck am I? I am currently an OpenSUSE board member. I'm the lead developer for Kalpa. I'm also the LXQT maintainer, or a LXQT maintainer for Fedora and OpenSUSE. I actually don't have an IT background. I come out of the heavy equipment and in construction and mining is where I come from. I was a parts guy. This has been a hobby on the side for most of my life, and now I have the luxury of being able to do this semi full time. So, how many folks here know or have an idea of what an immutable system is? Okay, so everybody's got a pretty good idea of that. The concept of atomic updates, where you get it all gets updated or nothing gets updated. We don't penny partial things out. Uh, the ability to roll back to a working snapshot. Uh, this applies to most of the immutable offerings out there from everybody. Where if you get a bad update, you roll back to the last update. It doesn't affect your workflow. And another real commonality with the quote unquote immutable systems is we're all primarily delivering applications via a container of some sort, be it snaps, app images, flat packs. Uh, I see that the GNOME guys have proposed another new packaging format in a container at this year at Guadec, or using technologies like Docker or Podman. So I kind of wanted to give a little bit of an overview of some of like the three big desktop immutables that are out there right now. We have the Fedora Atomics. Fedora Core OS would be their server offering. This would include things like Bazzite, Bluefin, Aurora. Those are all downstream of the Fedora Atomics. They're using they're in the process of transitioning from RPM OS tree to the bootc, which is bootable containers. Uh, One of the strengths and the weaknesses of bootc and RPM OS tree is it's all remote compose. You're building a container up in the cloud somewhere, and when you do your updates, you're pulling an entire container down. They are working on this. I believe they're calling. I was just talking to Timothy, and I believe they're calling it rechunking, where you're not necessarily having to pull down an entire 2 or 3 gigabyte container file when you update things. Uh, the primary way to get your applications in Fedora's ecosystem is Flatpak, Toolbox, which is Podman on the back end, or by layering RPMs. The layering, as I understand it right now on bootc, is not a thing. You would need to modify the container files upstream to add whatever RPMs you think you need and then generate a new container. If you're doing it via RPM OS tree, where you're layering it on top of your local image, the downside of that one is it is dog slow. When you're running your updates, it is really slow. But as anybody that might have been involved in it can see, this model actually works great for the Bazzite guys, especially because they're chasing known hardware configurations. Steam decks are all the same hardware configuration. The ROG Ally, you don't get weird configurations with different network cards. So this works great for their use case with a gaming setup where they can roll what they need into their container to support Steam and the NVIDIA drivers and whatever else it is they're doing, and go with that. So that works out really well for them. Uh, you lose some flexibility with that setup. Vanilla OS is the other one. Apparently, and I just learned this when I was putting my slides together, V1 was actually Ubuntu based. And V2, which just released last month, they actually switched to using Debian SID as their base. They use a system called AB root, which is based on LVM thin provisioning. So you've always got a snapshot waiting. This is very similar actually to what Android does. They are also using a container-based workflow where you're composing up in the cloud and sending a container and is deploying locally. They are delivering their applications via Flatpak, via APX, which if I read the documentation correctly, is basically generating a Docker container. Like if you're getting something from Arch, it will spin up an Arch container. It'll grab the stuff via Pacman, install it in the container, and you go on your way. And then VSO shell, which is their vanilla. I forget exactly what VSO stands for, but it's a vanilla environment in a Docker container for your command line tools. What we do in the OpenSUSE world, our two desktop offerings are Aeon and Kalpa. Micro OS is the server operating system offering. We leverage ButterFS snapshots. And obviously they're mounted read-only. That's where you get... I actually don't like the term immutable because it's not true. If you root, you can do whatever you want. You can actually remount everything, read write, and modify whatever you want. So it's not immutable, but it is mounted read-only. And what we do is a transactional update. All of your updates are atomic. And we snapshot your running system, and then we do our updates in the new snapshot in the background. We never touch your running system. And none of that applies until you reboot the machine. So, but the way we're doing it, it's actually a local compose. So if you've only got 50 megabytes of updates to pull down, that's all you're pulling down. You don't have to pull down a whole container. And the transaction happening in the fresh snapshot, it's a traditional RPM-based package installation. It's actually no different than Tumbleweed other than working through the transactional update tool. And then we're delivering our applications. Flatpak is going to be your primary application source. We ship distrobox by default. So if you've got some weird package from the AUR or an Ubuntu PPA, you would just spin up an Arch distrobox and then do a distrobox export, and it acts like it's seamless on your desktop. Or you can install via transactional update RPMs, and it's treated just like any other package. It becomes part of your root FS, which we do have to do for some things. Broadcom network drivers, NVIDIA graphics drivers. If you've got weird hardware that ships their own drivers, obviously you have to have a way to load them in the base system. You can't do that in a container. Some other ones that, if you use Tailscale or some other VPN services, obviously you want that in the base system. It's networking. You need it there. So that's where we're at. And I haven't tested this yet, but theoretically, if you're using Aeon or Kalpa at some point and you decided you wanted to go back to a traditional Linux style distribution where everything's read-write, you change two flags, you remount everything read-write, and the system doesn't know the difference. I have a hard time seeing a circumstance where I would want to do that, but it is a possibility. That is not possible when you're doing a container-based update, an image-based update setup. So, what is Kalpa? So it's the micro OS transactional and atomic-based setup with a read-only root file system. We're using the KDE Plasma Desktop. I'm calling it a curated default installation. I am not loading this thing down with a bunch of applications. You're primarily, when you boot into this thing, you're basically going to get a terminal. You're going to get a text editor. It'll be Kate because I'm using KDE, and you'll get a web browser. And the web browser I'm shipping is Falcon because it's part of the KDE software collection. If you want to use Firefox or Brave or Vivaldi or whatever, you grab it from Flathub. And this is only designed to be a desktop and a workstation operating system. If you're trying to do a deal where you're sharing a box and you're hosting half the world's websites off of your desktop, I guess you could do it in Podman containers from your desktop machine, but that's not really what it's designed for. And as I said, it's a flexible design that doesn't require that much change from how you would use a traditional Linux system. The other part that is kind of nice about this is, so most of everything is coming, and this is actually true of MicroOS as well. This is coming out of OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. It's a rolling release system. There are no fixed releases for any of the OpenSUSE transactional setups. The OpenSUSE project does offer a fixed point release immutable called Leap Micro. I have not touched it, but if you like fixed point releases and you're looking for something that's ultra stable, maybe give it a look. I can't speak to whether I haven't touched it. The other thing is we are automatic updates. It is set up, it updates, it attempts to run an update in a maintenance window at midnight, between midnight and 2 a.m. every night. And this will update your flat packs, it'll update the base system, and it will update any distro boxes that you have. The distro boxes and the flat packs are live updates. They kind of have to be. The base system updates, until you reboot the machine doesn't know the difference. It's in a separate snapshot, and you would decide when you want to reboot. I run this every day. I reboot once a week. Sometimes I get an update every night. It just kind of depends on what Tumbleweed happens to be doing that day. But it is very nice in that you are getting the latest kernel very quickly. You're getting the latest KDE Plasma updates very quickly. When there are CVEs, you're getting them pretty quick. Not necessarily. Sometimes 0 days are going to bite you in the butt, but they're going to bite everybody. There's not much you can do about that. One of the other things is, and this is a design decision on my part, I'm not supporting X11. It's not that it doesn't work, I just don't support it. And I'm also not supporting BIOS booting. And that's actually inherited from MicroOS. I would have to do a bunch of work on top of what they've already done to re-enable the BIOS setup. Primarily because of the sanity checks the transactional update does. BIOS booting makes that much more difficult. The one thing that I'm not doing with Kalpa that Aeon is, which is the GNOME variant of this, Aeon is doing measured boot and leveraging the TPM, which is completely incompatible with a BIOS boot. It would require much more coding than I have the skill to do to make that work. So for folks that have old machines that can't do UEFI or have old graphics cards that the Wayland drivers are no good for, it's probably not your cup of tea. I can't make everybody happy. So, who is this for? This is for people that want a desktop machine. It's for people. Ideally, pie in the sky fantasy hat on. This should be as easy to use as, and everybody in this room is going to laugh, but it should be as easy to use as Windows. It's KDE. It's got a taskbar. It's got a start button. You should theoretically be able to set this in front of anybody that's used Windows and they can kind of figure it out. I know Gideon uses GNOME, and
well, and I do have KDE on. I've got Fedora's Atomic KDE on here, and I just set my dad up with Fedora. He's been a Windows user for 25 plus years, and he loves it.
Yeah.
It works.
So that is where I want to get this to. I'm not there yet, and I'm going to discuss that a little bit here going forward. So who might not want this setup? If you're really into highly customizable setups, if you want to do custom partitioning or use other file systems for your root, if you've got really bizarre hardware requirements, it's probably not great for you. The other one that is not there yet is I don't have anything that I would consider stable or well tested for anything other than x86 64. There is an ARM build, but I would not consider it stable by any stretch of the imagination. The other thing is a multi-purpose machine. It's not really set up for that. It's not designed to be that. Could you use it as an HTPC? Sure, I guess. I haven't tried. uh, Folks that aren't comfortable or just don't like using container-based workflows. There are people that don't, and there's valid reasons for it. And in the case of the OpenSUSE ecosystem, Tumbleweed's not going anywhere. If you've got a way you like to do things, Tumbleweed is going to be there for as long as I can, see anyway. People that don't like KDE, you're not going to like Kalpa. That's just. And the other one being folks that for whatever reason don't like Wayland, or have workloads that Wayland is not ready for yet. Uh, those are shrinking as time goes on, but there are still a few things where Wayland is still behind X11, especially in the graphics. Uh, how do I put that? Uh, Graphics ecosystem. Like the color, I think this has been fixed now, but up till recently, like your ICC color profiles on Wayland were not up to snuff for professional graphic artists. At least I am not in that space, but as I understand it, I think that has gotten close, if not fixed, at this point. Works fine. Yeah. I have had some arguments with some of the Bazite developers. They ship the Steam RPM in the base system for Bazite. There are some things that will not work with the Steam Flatpak. If you want to use GameScope, which is a customized Wayland compositor that replaces GNOME Shell or KWin, that won't work with the Flatpak. There's a few other things. And then the other caveat is if it doesn't work on a Steam Deck, it's not going to work. I'm using the same Steam client and the same Linux stuff that Valve is. Like right now, you can't play, for instance, GTA Online on a Linux machine because Rockstar implemented BattleEye anti-cheat and they won't enable the Linux support.
So basically anything with any sort of VRM probably
Which, well, see, that's the really weird part is if you're using the BattleEye anti-cheat specifically, Linux is supported, but it's on the developer to enable that support when they roll it into their system. Because there's a bunch of them that work just fine. For whatever reason, Rockstar has said no, it's Windows only. You can play the single player campaign all you want, but if you want to play multiplayer, it has to be from a Windows machine. If you are a serious gamer and you're going to be gaming most of the time, I'll be completely install Bazite. Those guys do great work. And if that's your thing and you're doing gaming and that's your reason for having a computer, I have a hard time seeing why I would try to duplicate their work. They're much more hardcore gamers than I am, and they've done a lot of optimization on top of Silverblue and Kinoite, depending on which desktop you want to run. So where am I at today with this? So this project, MicroOS was introduced in 2019. Richard Brown started doing things with the GNOME desktop in 2021 as a personal project. And around that time, somebody prior to me decided, well, if we have a GNOME version of this, we ought to have a KDE version of it. They got it working and then just kind of didn't maintain it. So in mid 2022, basically the announcement was put out that, well, we're dropping KDE from this project because nobody's working on it, nobody's maintaining it. That's where I got involved. It was still called MicroOS Desktop Plasma at the time. And then in 2023, we decided to rename to Aeon and Kalpa, basically because we are starting to diverge because of the desktop use case enough that calling it MicroOS is a little disingenuous. We're using some of the technologies, but if you ask the MicroOS developers about graphics problems, they're building a server operating system. They don't care, and they probably can't help. So we did a rebranding of these, and we actually did the rebrand to Aeon and Kalpa for a number of reasons where we decided to sort of split things up. Partially because Aeon is targeting things a little differently than I am. I don't want to say that one is better than the other. They're just different ideas. And if I get across nothing in this talk today, I don't necessarily believe that our system is that much better than Fedora's or Vanilla OS's. They're just different ways to achieve a safer system, quote unquote safer, that's a little harder to break for people. If you've been around Linux for years, whether you were using Ubuntu or Fedora or OpenSUSE, and you've enabled a bunch of development repos or coppers or PPAs, and you've installed a bunch of software from who knows where, you shouldn't ever run into that with any of these systems, whether you're using the Fedora Atomics or ours, because the base system isn't going to change that much. It's just going to get updated, and it's going to get security updates. And everything else, worst case scenario, if you really get in there and start playing with Flatpak overrides and screw something up, wipe it, restore from backup, because, please back things up. One of the things I will say, because I run into this all the time, Btrfs snapshots are not backups. There's a lot of people that have that misconception in their head. They absolutely are not. If you get creative and you're using Btrfs send and receive, you can make them be backups. But that's not how the system's set up by default. So I'm stable-ish. I've got dozens, maybe hundreds. It's open source, so who knows how many people have downloaded and are using this? I don't know. But I can count in the last 4 years, and I'm the one developing it, so I'm the one breaking stuff all the time. I've had fail to boot about maybe a handful of times. It is currently offered in an alpha state because I'm not ready to declare that this is ready for everybody to go give it to their grandmother. But my beta release is coming real quickly. So what's holding it up right now? For instance, if you want to install Kalpa, you're going to be using the micro OS installation media, which causes some issues. I'm actually going to just admit this in public on camera. Right now, if you install Kalpa, it's going to dump you to TTY on first boot. Because it's still tied to the micro OS product, I can't actually override the default display manager, and you have to run a manual command to get into your desktop on first boot. You only have to do it once, but you do have to do it. That will be fixed when I get the new standalone installer where I'm not having other products I have to fight with. Which will be based on the new, from the, actually it's SUSE Corporate that is doing most of the work on it, but it's called a Gamma instead of the old YAST installer. I am also looking at using Tick, which is something that Richard wrote for Aeon, which is basically your only option in Tick is which disk do you want to install it to. And you tell it which disk to install it to, it yeets everything at the disk, sets everything up, and reboots. And the entire install takes about 15 seconds. It's the fastest installer I've ever dealt with. It's great. But it's very inflexible, and there's actually some problems with KDE that make Tick very difficult for me to use. And then some further user interface and user experience work and refinements. Branding work. The first boot experience is what is holding up why I can't currently use Tick. If you've installed Fedora Workstation recently, anytime, it is much more like a Windows install where the installer just is doing what it's doing, and then you reboot the machine, and then you set up your user, you set up your time zone, et cetera, et cetera. That's all done on first boot. KDE Upstream is working on putting that together. It's just not ready to go yet. The Tick installer currently does not offer any modules for setting up users or setting the time zone because GNOME is offering that on first boot. I would have to write modules. I I have a hard time justifying duplicating what Upstream's already working on for a short-term fix. So we'll see where that goes from here. And then honestly, I need more real-world testing just from people using it. I own no NVIDIA hardware to test this on. It might work great. It might flame out. I don't have anything to test on, so I don't know. And I haven't seen any bug reports from anybody saying, hey, I've got a GTX 1650 and I tried to install this and it ate itself. I don't know. Some of the things that are beyond beyond the beta going forward. Plasma Login Manager will be the replacement for SDDM. For those that have been involved in the Plasma ecosystem, SDDM as the display manager has been brought in as an official KDE project. Well, it's a soft fork of it. SDDM still exists on its own, but they are taking the SDDM code base and they are reworking it to get some of the features like GNOME Display Manager has, where you're able to control. If you boot up a GNOME-based system, GDM allows you to change things like screen brightness, do some networking stuff, accessibility, because it's so tightly integrated and Mutter. You're basically running a stripped down GNOME shell when you're in GDM. Plasma Login Manager is going to do very similar things and provide better integration. The KDE initial system setup is what I was talking about, the first boot wizard, where on your first boot you would set up users, networking, connect to if you use like Google services or an Exchange server, you would do all that in this wizard. One of the features I would like to be able to do is, and these are actually two different things, but they kind of tie in, is a factory reset or a power wash. I believe Chrome OS actually calls it a power wash. But basically revert the system back to stock without doing a reinstall. This is something that has good capabilities, and we have the capability in transactional update now to do the install via a bootable container. We just wouldn't be doing the subsequent updates via container images. But what we might be able to do, and we're playing with it, me and a few other developers, where you can take your system, load up a fresh snapshot, deploy this image to it that gets you back to baseline, and then boot into it. It's one of those things that's a very nice to have. It's got limited use for a lot of folks, but when you need it, I think it would be very nice. Especially when you've got config drift, weird things happen.
People who want to mass deploy it somewhere.
Yes. Yeah. And the other one is I would like to be able to support ARM and RISC-V when we start seeing some more consumer boards out there, that are viable for consumers. And that's more along the lines of that's stuff that just needs testing. So if you wanted to get involved, and if you don't want to get involved, just try it. Just download it and try it. If you don't like it, I'm not going to be offended. It's not for everybody. I want bug reports. Please file. But if you're trying it out, file bug reports, please. I don't. If there's problems and if nobody tells me, I don't know, and I can't fix anything. I can always use help with documentation and translation. I just had a gentleman fix the translation for the website, where now everything's properly translated. And I've had community members that have done translations for Italian and Spanish for the website so far. But really, I'll take help anywhere. You know, if you can code and you're bored and want to work on something, I'll accept code contributions. I am not the greatest coder in the world. Who is? But in any case, that's, you know, sort of an overview of where it's at and what it is. If there are, you know, any questions, I'm happy to take them.
A couple things come to mind. So when you were talking about so the updates install automatically into a snapshot, but you might choose to only reboot once a week, or so is there like just one staging snapshot that it continuously adds to until the next reboot, or does it create additional snapshots?
So the question is, with the update mechanism being automated, whether it's sort of like cumulative updates, or if am I getting that right?
Yeah, or are you creating a new snapshot every time there are new packages?
So the default is right now it is snapshotting whatever is currently running and then applying the updates in the background. There is a flag for transactional update that is called continue, which actually takes the newest snapshot in the system and then updates that. Currently, it is generating a new snapshot based on the running system every time it updates. So, multiple times. Yeah. Yeah. That's actually something and it's not just me, but some other folks are arguing with the developer of the transactional update tool. We would like the continue setup to be the default and not the generate a new snapshot every time. Because, I mean, I live in Seattle. I have very fast internet. If I have to download a gig multiple times, I don't really care. That's not true for everybody. You know, some people are bandwidth constrained and having to download massive amounts of data over and over again. It's not great.
Well, yeah, and if one of the benefits is not having to download the whole container for an update,
Yeah.
you want to retain that benefit as much as, so that's
Yeah.
good to know that there's, even if it's not the default yet, that you've got kind of a way.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's actually the way you do it. If you had something that you wanted to install into the base system and you kind of had to manually run through your dependency chain, you can use that m-continue to keep iterating new snapshots as you install stuff as you work through your problem, instead of having to. I've had to do it. One of the weird edge cases for dealing with flat packs at times is when you have a crash and you're reporting a backtrace upstream. Most of your debug info is going to come out of the SDK, the Flatpak SDK. Depending on what Flatpak is talking to on the base system, you also sometimes have to grab your debug info for the base packages. And occasionally, when I've had to report stuff, yeah, I'm having to do that 2 or 3 times to get all of the debug info installed so I can get them a good backtrace for a bug report. It's something that's being worked on both by the Flatpak guys and us at the distribution level. I've been talking to Timothy from the Fedora Atomics. The Fedora Atomics have the same issue. So, and I would suspect if I had talked to the Vanilla OS guys, they probably have the same issue as well. Anybody else got anything?
Just to clarify my understanding of some of that. So if you had just been patched and everything's perfect, no patches available, then another patch comes out, first patch, then you make a snapshot, patch goes in there. And with the current thing, if a second patch came out later, then you would just make a new snapshot, download 2 patches into that snapshot.
Yes.
Continue, does it the first time just make 1 snapshot with the patch, and the next time adds a second one?
So, you know, I actually wish I had a whiteboard so I could write it down, but it doesn't matter. You know, if you're on snapshot n and there's a patch that comes through for something, it's going to generate n+1 and install that patch and wait for you to reboot. If another patch comes in before you reboot, it's going to make n+1 plus 1, so it's plus 2, and n plus 2 is going to have both the patches in it.
Is that the same snapshot that both of those go into with the
No.
continue option?
If it was with the continue option, yes. That it's just that's not the default behavior right now.
Couple of questions.
Yep.
So with your update mechanism, you say that there's a window of time where it automatically happens. From your sort of infrastructural point of view, as your project grows, how is that going to scale if everyone's downloading it about the same time? You're going to do some kind of fleet management there to.
So part of what goes on here is it's hitting a CDN to begin with, through the mirror infrastructure. And it is also easily adjustable. It's just a system D timer where you can tell it, if that time window doesn't work for you, adjust it to whatever you need to. That is one of the things that I haven't written because it's been kind of low priority. But as I get it into the hands of more end users and the target end users, they're not going to want to dive into a terminal and be manually editing a timer file to adjust that. Yeah, I need to write a KCM in the KDE system settings where you can adjust that timer.
And the second question is, having just replaced my mother's Windows laptop with sort of running Linux because I'm fed up with breaking it.
Yeah.
Have you had any of your users break this yet without like fidgeting on the command line?
No, actually. The only folks that have broken this so far have been folks that have there is a method through the transactional update tool to get into the base system in a read-write state. I don't actually document that in the documentation because I don't want people using it. Yeah, it's kind of defeating the purpose of running a immutable system in the first place. But no, I've got a bunch of people that have been running it and using it like, I mean, ultimately it does come down to it's your machine. You have root access. If you want to break it, go for it. It's your machine. I can't tell you what to do and not do with your own hardware. But if used as intended, it has been remarkably stable. And the very nice thing is if you get an update that something broke and it will get caught by the health checker when it generates the new snapshot, it just throws that snapshot away. You're never going to boot into a broken snapshot.
Well, so now I've got the third question.
Yeah.
How do you measure whether or an upgrade was successful and the system is booted and has finished in a working state? So you know to switch.
So here's where some of my personal ignorance is going to come into play. I didn't write that tool. I don't know how it works.
I mean, typically, like in the embedded world, is you switch to the B bank or the B snapshot.
Yeah.
When you reboot, if it stays up for more than 5 minutes, it's probably okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
And the other thing that is built into this is Kalpa is still using Grub 2. Aeon is actually using systemd boot. It doesn't actually matter, but in Grub, you have a menu entry. It says boot from read-only snapshot. You select the prior good snapshot. If worst case scenario, you get a broken boot, you get into Grub, you pick the previous snapshot, and then when it boots, you just do transactional update rollback. It sets that as the new default snapshot, and you go on with your life. The only failure of boots that I've had so far are because I couldn't I fat fingered my decryption password. That's not the system's fault. That's me not being able to type. Yeah.
Where did the name come from?
So the name actually comes from, it's Sanskrit. And the reason it's Kalpa is because it begins with a K and I'm a KDE guy. So I wanted to find, Richard decided to call his version of it, and it is the older version, the more senior product, Aeon, which is used with the GNOME desktop. He chose Aeon because it's a system that shouldn't need to be reinstalled. You install it once, and it should, absent some serious changes in something like systemd or glibc or the Linux kernel itself, you probably shouldn't ever need to reinstall it if he's done everything right. It's just going to continue to roll until your hardware is out of date, basically. So Kalpa is basically the same idea as an Aeon. It's just out of Sanskrit instead of out of, I think Aeon is Greek. And it began with a K, and I liked the sound of it, and I was like, that's the name. No, nope. Any other questions I can answer?
One other that comes to mind, is there any integration into Discover yet to like show that an update is being applied or to show anything about the current set, like that there is a pending update to reboot into?
So the flat packs are all managed through Discover, and that update mechanism works fine. I'm not doing anything special on the distribution end. I'm basically using Discover just like Upstream ships it. And I don't remember exactly what the schedule is, but every 24 hours, it's going to check and download Flatpak updates. The nice thing about Flatpak with the containerized namespacing and all of that, the updates won't break your running processes because they're running in a container to begin with. And you will get a notification in the system tray that says updates have been applied. That goes for the main system as well, and it will be a persistent notification that you actually have to close to get it off your screen. And it'll just say updates have been applied. Please reboot your computer. You can close that notification and keep working until you're ready to update. Because I absolutely do not ever want to get into the situation where Windows has decided it wants to update, and whether you're working or not, you're updating. So what does that look? So that's what I got, and I think that is. Oh wow, I went a little faster than I thought I was going, but gets everybody a break before the next talk. Thank you.